and welcome to Nashoba Now. I'm Michael Wood, Superintendent of Schools for Nashoba Regional School District. In the next half hour, I hope to share with you the things that are going on now in Nashoba. Hello, I'm Michael Wood, and this is Nashoba Now, here to update you on a few events upcoming in the next few weeks. It's the end of March and still very cold, but we're hopeful for some warm weather very soon. As we've been discussing on our show, we have the budget process is in full swing. We'll be sending a budget brochure to all the homes in the next 3 weeks. So be looking for that. That will be outlining the budget, accomplishments of the district in the past year, as well as information for you to be an informed voter at the annual town meetings, which occur on May 5th in all 3 towns at the same time at 7 p.m. in locations designated by the towns. So if you have questions, we are looking for people to ask them for the show, and certainly about the budget and preparing for the annual town meeting. It would be a great opportunity to send your emails to superintendent@nrsd.net, and I'd be happy to answer them on the show or answer them individually as we go through the next few weeks. Part of the process in the next couple of weeks as well that we also undergo, as I've mentioned before, is working with our legislators, and that has already begun in terms of meeting with area legislators to talk about the budget process in both the House and the Senate. As you may understand, the governor proposes a budget in January, and then the House and the Senate respond to that by developing their own proposals, and then there's a conference in June, usually, to meet out the differences between the House and the Senate. So we get together with legislators, we being superintendents and administrators from area districts, to really talk about the issues that are at hand because of differences in what the governor proposes and what the House and the Senate are proposing. And this year, we were fortunate enough to work with the legislators to get them to agree to a joint resolution on Chapter 70, which was a big step for the legislators, because as you can imagine, many of our communities across the Commonwealth, we actually make decisions about budgets without the state budget being finalized. And for some communities, that's a fairly sizable portion of their revenue source. And so it was really a big step for a joint resolution to be voted on by the House and the Senate 2 weeks ago. And so we know what our base is for Chapter 70 going into our annual town meeting. And that's an important piece of information, as well as I believe the towns have their municipal aid base known and understood. That doesn't mean that changes can't happen in what the House and the Senate conference on for a final budget recommendation to the governor in June, but it gives us that floor that we will experience for the annual town meeting. I'm pleased to say that we have a lot of things going on in March as far as activities that our students have been involved in. At our last Nashoba Now, I talked about the athletic accomplishments of our communities, schools, but this week I want to emphasize the theater arts. We had most recently the high school put on Les Miserables, which was an absolutely fantastic production. They just do a tremendous job with their plays, and what's really great is the number of kids that are involved, whether they're on the stage or in the tech crew. It's a passion for them, and it shows in the quality that they put forth in terms of their productions. So I want to congratulate all of the high school students, both those who were actors and actresses on stage, as well as the tech crew, who did a fabulous job keeping the play moving right along. I also want to congratulate the efforts of our middle schools, where our students are engaged in plays as well. At Hale, we had Alice in Wonderland, and at Florence Sawyer, in 2 weekends, we'll have Dr. Dolittle, and then at Luther Burbank Middle School, we have the play Thoroughly Modern Millie, which is a great opportunity for our kids as well. So our kids are getting lots of exposure to different play opportunities. It's an area of enrichment we've been building over the last number of years. We also have a great enrichment opportunity for kids that we partner with the Mary Rowlandson Elementary School PTO, and they do a fabulous job putting on a play in the summer. And there's usually between 65 and 75 students involved in that activity as well. So I really want to applaud all of the efforts and the creativity that go into these plays, because they're a great opportunity for kids. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that I think we all have in mind as parents and as educators working with students. You've probably heard me in the past in a number of different settings talk about the focus of education, and why I think that Nashoba schools are so successful is that that's what we're about. We're very focused on making sure kids know and understand what we expect them to do. But that building of focus within the schools is one aspect of why they're successful. But it's also that expectation and that culture of expectation gets built in the home as well. And so I think that one of the things that I want to congratulate our families on, and certainly want to encourage the efforts that they do, and want to open up in terms of informing us as to what we could do to assist, is avenues of building support for learning in homes, and making people understand the value of having that value system in the home and the conversation going on. The experiences that kids have, whether it be taking walks in fields and looking at flowers and trees, or being able to go places and be part of events outside of our communities, is great as well. All of those add to the quality of the experience that they can bring to formal learning in schools. But it's even better for the natural conversations that kids have with one another and adults as well. So the time that you commit at home for formal learning is an important aspect. But as we encourage parents to remember that we want them to enjoy family life as well as have the expectation about homework and schoolwork, but the two should be divided. And the expectation for homework should be about where it takes place, how long the student has to spend time doing it, and the conversation about what has to get done. But in terms of getting involved and trying to teach material, we really want families to know that they don't have to get that deep into the work around homework, that's what our educators are for, and that's what we expect them to work with kids on a regular basis. So creating that home experience to be about when they do homework and the place that they do homework is really enough. And that the idea that you can have, so you don't get into those battles with kids about, well, it should be done this way, or though Mom, my teacher told me to do it that way. Those kinds of conversations, we really want to encourage you not to engage in that, and really just understand that have the time for it, have this place for it, and then if there are questions, you send the note to the teacher or send an email to the teacher and let them know that Johnny had difficulty with it, and you need them to work with it at school. And that's really what we expect and what we encourage, because it really helps the conversation at school go a lot easier around making sure that Johnny does learn the concepts and does understand what to do. We think that the conversations that happen at home about what goes on at school should be more about where kids can make connections of what they're learning at school with the real world. So, when parents can talk about their jobs and about what they learned in school and how they're using it in their current careers, that's rich, and that's really important for kids to hear, because then they gain purpose for what they're learning. And that's important to enculturate early on, so that as kids grow older and want to start to set goals and want to have the opportunity to select classes, especially as they move into high school, they know and understand what's the foundation for the career that they might want, or the careers that they may want. Because as we know, in this day and age, most adults will have many types of careers over their lifetime. So that's an important aspect of the home-school connection. And lastly, I would just want to emphasize that the other part of learning is knowing when to relax and knowing when to stop and take a breather and have some leisure time. And so we definitely want to encourage families and parents to work with kids around teaching kids how to relax and finding activities that are relaxing, and a balance in that. There's gaming and videos and so forth that kids enjoy doing, but there are a lot of active leisure activities that we want kids to get involved with and learn how to do, so that they'll have lifelong leisure opportunities and stay fit as they grow and mature. I want to make a switch now and talk about work we've been involved in the last few months, getting ready for updating our math curriculum materials that we have in the district. We, over the last 2 years since we rewrote our curriculum for math, we've been adjusting the materials that go along with that curriculum. And most importantly, we started with our high school who needed some updating. We, this past year, have been working with our elementary schools, doing some supplemental materials that help our existing math curriculum, which is basically the Everyday Math series. And then next year, with passage of our budget, we'll be purchasing the middle school adoption to go along with our new curriculum. This is a labor of love by those who teach math, because it really gets to what they think will be the best material that kids can have in their hands to give them practice and to give them direction when the teacher's not there. So it's a very deliberate process, very thorough, that we go through with all the teachers who are involved, to be thoughtful about the different materials out there. And so our coordinator for STEM, Martina Kenyon, has already begun these conversations with the teachers, and she'll be looking at the content alignment, that is, how many of the standards are covered at the particular grade that our curriculum wants them covered, is an important piece. Then we are looking at math practices. I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail, because that's a piece of the new curriculum that is getting more attention by our teachers as we want kids to become better prepared with mathematics. And then the overarching considerations that teachers want, because they think they're important in terms of how they orient their classes, the essential questions that they feel they want answered as part of the curriculum, are important considerations. So the math practices that are important for kids to understand overlap into other subject areas. And so one of the things that we like to have kids do is make connections between and among content areas. It's really important that kids see the value of content, because they make a connection to another aspect of what they're learning. So these 8 particular math practices are conceptual in mind. They're not something that people would say, you're right or you're wrong, but they're ways of thinking about mathematics. And that's a different approach than many of us learned as coming up through the grades in terms of rote memorization. There's a time and place for rote memorization, and it's important to get basic math facts learned in a brief amount of time, that is between age 5 through age 10, the basic math facts, if you will. But these concepts are broader than that, and they're really about how kids think and use mathematics to learn mathematics. So, for example, the 8 math practices that you'll be hearing more and more about as as the curriculum unfolds in the next few years is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Perseverance is a human characteristic, a skill that we want all people to learn. How do you persevere when you're struggling? And especially for kids who don't get the answer right the first time, it's important to keep at it and to keep looking at multiple strategies that might solve the problem, not to just give up. And so that's a practice that we want to inculturate in our students. Reason abstractly and quantitatively, using what do they know, what do they understand, what's the concepts that they could apply here to learn a new concept. That's an important math practice to find out. Construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. So many of us have learned math in a way that it was all about what we knew and understood. We know that learning happens more and more thoroughly when it's social, when kids can talk about what they're learning, what they understand. And so in math, it's the same way. Sharing ideas about how to solve problems, sharing ideas about strategies that are more effective, that would get to the correct answer faster. Those are things that we want kids to learn how to do, and how to articulate that in using mathematical terms is really important. And so that's a math practice that we're encouraging. Model with mathematics, trying to figure out how to build models that could solve problems. That's an important skill, to be able to picture it in their minds. We talk a lot about mental math now. We talk a lot about building models that explain what the basic principle is that they're trying to learn. And again, sharing those models among partners to better understand if they do explain the problem is really an important skill to learn. Using appropriate tools strategically, certainly calculators and computers are valuable. There are math formulas that are embedded in both that are very helpful, but you need to know which one you need to really get to the answers and to work through the problems so that you're efficient about the time that you have. There are some things that a calculator is going to solve a problem a lot easier than if you need to go to an Excel spreadsheet and develop more involved mathematics. So making sure that you understand the difference of how to proceed is really important. Attend to precision. How many times have you heard or remember your teacher or your parents say, don't rush through, check your homework over? That's important. It's really critical that you don't make silly mistakes. To this day, a common refrain in work that I have with my colleagues is, does that make sense to you? When they put forth an answer, does it make sense? When you look at something, can you understand why it could be a wrong answer? And could you explain that? So making sure that you look for precision is really key. Look for and make use. So here it can have multiple meanings in terms of building those models that we talked about is certainly an important aspect of structure. Understanding how to frame the explanation of a particular answer that you arrived at is a really important structure that you need to have. And then the vocabulary that you use to explain concepts is part of that structure. Certain vocabulary lends itself to geometry that does not lend itself to explaining algebra. So you want to understand the structures that go along with the content that you're trying to understand and explain to others. And then lastly, kind of going along with that notion of using appropriate tools strategically, look for opportunities for repeated reading, applying understanding and principles of mathematics to different concepts that help you get to the answer faster is really an important skill to have. And it's something that we're going to be highlighting along with the other 7 math practices in all the curriculum, not just the middle school curriculum, but all of the curriculum in the coming years. Switching gears again, I want to update the community. We just had our 3rd meeting of the NRHS Space Study Committee, and we had a great meeting last night. Bill Cleary, our Director of Facilities, reviewed the current conditions of the building. So we looked at the HVAC system, the roof, the boiler systems, the well, and the window walls as a priority. And so we talked a lot about the existing conditions, what's in our capital plan over the next few years to address where systems are in need to be addressed, and then talked about different models of that could address those if the investment now doesn't have a short enough payback. So we're gearing up. We have another meeting on April 30th, and we will be scheduling some visits for May to area high schools that have been remodeled or are brand new to begin to look at those. We also had a brief presentation based on the condition of the building from Principal Perry Graham about how department heads see the physical limitations of their school on their departments, and what are some of the issues that teachers raise as needing to be addressed by looking at the physical conditions. And lastly, I wanted to bring to folks' attention in this time of year, talk a lot about transition. Today I will talk about 8th and 9th grade transition, and in future shows I'll talk about 5th to 6th grade transitions. But this is the time of year when our 8th graders are working to choose their courses for 9th grade. So it's a new experience. It's for some parents, it's brand new. Their oldest child is 8th grade, moving on to the high school. And we've had a similar system for a number of years now. And so it's important that parents are involved. By now, 8th grade parents should have seen what the 8th grade teachers have recommended for their children. And students have selected all of their courses by now. And so what's important at this point is that if parents want to make changes in those selections, they can go through what's called the intent to override, which is simply a notice to the high school that they would like to reserve the right to make a change at a future date. They can follow through on that or not. It's totally up to the parent and student to have that conversation and make that decision. What we want to make sure is that students feel comfortable in the courses that they're choosing and the levels of those courses in terms of the rigor and the amount of time they're going to have to invest outside of school to be able to keep up with the pacing of the work. What we try to stress is that the levels are about similar content, but it's more about pacing when you advance up the course level system. And so certainly with classes that are honors or AP, there's a volume of curriculum above the norm to be able to stay and take the AP test, for example. There's coverage of material that's above and beyond the expectation of the standard curriculum. And so certainly as a incoming ninth grader, making sure that they have a balance of course load so that they can also get used to their new environment. It's a big adjustment to go from the smaller middle schools into a larger high school. And so part of that adjustment includes also having a life out of school, including activities that they're involved in through their families and activities of interest unique to the individual student, but also the extracurricular activities that are available to ninth graders at the high school. And a big part of staying engaged in the high school is being part of those activities. So we want kids to look at balance in their life, but to also challenge themselves. So this is a big time in the homes of eighth graders right now. We know it. We want to be there for you. This year, as it has been for a number of years, the decision-making timeline is before parent-teacher conferences for eighth graders. We recognize that. Eighth grade teachers know that. If parents have questions, we certainly want them to contact their eighth grade teacher in the content area where they have questions and explore possible answers to those questions. And certainly if they don't feel if their questions are about the curriculum itself at the high school level, then they really should reach out to high school administration and guidance to get more answers about that. So that is what I have for today. Some news for the next couple of weeks. April Enrichment Vacation Week is available. It's online now on our website. So if you are interested in an enrichment plan for your child, please sign up. We're also offering for the first time a moot court opportunity right after school lets out for middle school students. So if students are involved in that, interested in that, then please sign up for that. And lastly, I mentioned earlier the summer theater opportunity at our high school that's sponsored by the Mary Rowlandson Elementary PTO. That's a great opportunity, and I certainly encourage folks who are looking for that kind of outlet to definitely seek that out for the summer. So if you have any questions for me and for that I've covered in the show or about other topics, please send your emails to superintendent@nrsd.net. That's Nashoba Now. Thank you for watching.